Hey, everybody. We got some big fights this weekend, right? We got in multiple organizations. We got the UFC. They're going to have Hinata Moicano versus the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung. In Bellator, you got Rafael Lovato Jr. fighting Gegard Mousasi for the middleweight strap. And then you move over to bare knuckle fighting, and you got Artem Lobov and Paulie Malignaggi. So a lot of fights going on this Saturday. All of them are on the 22nd, I believe. They all start around the same time, so you're going to have to pick and choose unless you got 3 different fucking TVs set up. But let's get into a little bit of news discussion. Whatever. I haven't done one of these in forever, so I apologize if I'm a little rusty. But, all right, Henry Cejudo is out for 6 months, right? And luckily for when fighters get hurt, it's not that big of a deal if they're out for that long. Because if you were to lose, if your like quarterback got hurt in football and you were like, you found out that he had to have shoulder surgery, he's going to be out for 6 months, your team's basically fucked, right? But it doesn't really work that way in fighting, because if you're active, you're probably fighting like 4 times a year. If you're once every 3 months, if you're active. At the championship level, it's probably more common to see like 3 title defenses a year if you're pretty active. So he's already fought twice this year, and he fought against TJ Dillashaw and Marlon Moraes. So no fucking joke, right? And we need to talk about how impressive Henry Cejudo's run has been, because he's got 3, basically, he's accomplished the height of the sport 3 different times. You know, when he was 18 or 19, he was the youngest gold medalist in freestyle wrestling history, for Americans at least. He goes on to win the 125-pound title from Demetrius Johnson, who's widely considered as one of the greatest of all time. He knocks out TJ Dillashaw while TJ Dillashaw's on EPO when he jumps down to 125. A lot of people debate that stoppage, but man, put the EPO stuff aside and how you feel about it, right? Just being objective about the fight. When Henry landed that shot and hurt TJ was starting to recover, right? Or not starting to recover, but he was like still there. But after Henry just put it on him, man, I mean, he swarmed him. And in that entire sequence, I don't think that he missed a shot. And you know, I think a lot of people think about fights like the guy has to be out fucking cold, not responding in order for them to, you know, stop the fight. And that doesn't make sense to me, because if you're a ref, right, you're watching this stuff up close every day, and you have a better idea. You have a better idea about what's happening. You're closer to the action, right? So it's easy to judge it from the outside, but when you're in there and you're watching these guys fight, sometimes you just realize that a fight has to be stopped because he's no longer able to defend himself. Like, yeah, you could have let TJ get knocked out, but I mean, and with chokes, it's a little more definitive because the consequences are less grave, right? Like, you tap a guy out, what the fuck ever, he falls asleep. But when you got a guy getting fucking swarmed, you have an Olympic caliber wrestler on top of him. This guy just cut down 10 pounds below a weight class that he usually fights in. And he's already small to begin with, so it's a bigger deal to cut. It's a bigger deal to cut from, you know, if you go from 155 to 145, I'm sure it sucks. But if you go from 135 to 125, that's a larger percentage of your body weight. You got to take all these things into consideration. And in my opinion, Henry had TJ in a position that he was not going to get out of. And he wasn't missing with the strikes. And TJ was fucking hurt. I mean, sometimes fights have to be stopped when you can no longer defend yourself, right? When you can no longer intelligently defend yourself, that's when you call it, right? And I thought that TJ had chances, but Henry just didn't give him any opportunity to get back up. And then he fights Marlon Moraes, who was beating him up in the first round. He's dangerous, man. Look at the guys he's knocked out. Jimmy Rivera, Aljamain Sterling. I mean, he's no fucking joke. Goes out and taps out Rafael Assunção, right, in the rematch. And that was his UFC debut against Rafael Assunção. Assunção is no fucking joke. So to go out and get a finish over him in a rematch when you lost, I think, a split decision to him the first time. I mean, Marlon Moraes is a killer. And Henry was able to just weather the storm, put it on him, and steal the 135-pound title. And now he's a gold medalist in wrestling. He's won the 125-pound title, and he's won the 135-pound title. I mean, he's got an argument for the greatest combat sports athlete ever. He's got, I mean, him and Daniel Cormier, right? And Daniel Cormier has some, see, the problem with Cormier is that he lost to John Jones not once but twice. You know, and Henry lost to Demetrius but came back and avenged the loss. So, I don't know, man. It's tough. I have debates in my head about who I think the greatest is all the time, and it's you can drive yourself crazy trying to think about everything, right? Because if I think about who the best fighter, it's John Jones, hands down. He's never lost. He's fought some of the best competition. But as far as accolades and accomplishments and representing the sport, Cejudo and DC are up there, man. I mean, it's impossible to deny now, and it's ever changing, right? Because at one point it was Silva, and as the game evolves, you're going to get new greats. So you're constantly going to be calling someone the greatest of all time. Like when Henry's gone, you're going to get somebody else in there that's running through everybody, and you're like, oh fuck, like this guy's a real deal. But anyway, I wanted to mention a couple months back, Jay Cuccinella, who fought on The Ultimate Fighter, was nice enough to do a podcast with me. Very nice guy, very tough, hard background, man, hard motherfucker. He's a tough dude. Went on to the Ultimate Fighter finale, lost to Brackatona, never got a UFC contract, which didn't make sense to me because, like, if you look at what the UFC's interested in, it's grit. It's guys who put on exciting fights and who like to stand and bang, and that's Jay Cuccinello. Bad motherfucker, like I said, nice dude, very down to earth, and he's got a big fight coming up tonight. I'm excited to see him come back. It's going to be airing on Facebook, FFC 38. Tune in. I think the main card starts at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So he's worth watching, man. He's, like I said, I think he deserves to be on the UFC roster after his performance in the Tough House and everything. So good luck, Jay. If you're watching this, if you see this, good luck, man. I'll be rooting for you. But speaking of prospects, on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, I can't remember the fella's name, but Dana White said that if the guy hadn't attempted a takedown attempt in the last 10 seconds, he probably would have earned a contract. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. That is so fucking stupid. The idea that you can be winning a fight and dominating a fight and you try to secure it towards the end of the round when guys, I mean, people get knocked out at the end of fights. Look at Derek Lewis when he knocked out, what the fuck's his name? I can't remember off the top of my head. Guy who fought for Doom. Fuck, he's good. I can't remember. Anyway, and how dare you say that you shouldn't attempt a takedown and secure your victory when he's like, oh, we want guys who go for it. Get the fuck out. Look at what happened to the Korean Zombie, who we're going to talk about later, when he did that against Yair Rodriguez. Knocked out in the last second with that. You don't fucking take chances when you're fighting. Like, obviously you do. Like, right? But they're, like, well thought out chances, right? Like, they have structure and, you know what, they have things behind them, right? Like, you have ideas behind what you're doing. You don't just go in there and wing it in the last 10 seconds. Fuck that. To win a contract and maybe get knocked the fuck out. Like, I don't like that. I like winning the fight. So, you're telling me that he was dominant enough to earn the contract, but in the last 10 seconds, he shot a takedown to lock up the win instead of throwing everything out there and potentially getting knocked out himself after putting on a good performance? Get the fuck out. That is not... Dana White has done some great fucking things for the sport, but that mentality is not what it needs. Those guys... I understand that it's a business, right, and that it's entertaining, but, I mean, fighting's dangerous enough to go in there and just throw your hands around in the last 10 seconds after you were in a war and maybe lose a fight that... What, it's going to go on his record as a loss? If he were to get knocked out? Get out of here. It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. It makes no fucking sense. Go out, win your fights. Fuck that shit. Don't listen to that. And here's what irritates me, is it fosters this kind of mentality that you have to go in and you have to be a fucking gunslinger to get a UFC contract. But look at who the most terrifying motherfucker in the UFC is. It's Khabib Nurmagomedov. That guy mauls people, and it's all grappling, and you're going to sit there and tell me that when a guy decides to lean on grappling to secure the fight, that you're going to question his will or his like passion to win or whatever you want to call it, his desire to win? Makes zero fucking sense. If you're questioning Khabib's desire to win, I mean, whatever. Makes no sense. And I don't think that it's good for the sport when you have the president of the UFC saying stuff like that. It's making young people think that instead of being technical, they should be wild. If you're wild by nature and that's your style, fine, be wild. It's going to make you who you are. It's going to make you good. It makes guys like Yair Rodriguez good, right? But, I mean, to take unnecessary risks is just fucking stupid. But anyway, we mentioned the Bellator card, and I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds with it because I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about like Rafael Levate's background, right? But a big fight between him and Gegard Mousasi for the middleweight title. I think Rafael Levate's like between 9-0 and like 12-0 somewhere. I can't remember his record, but man, he's fighting Gegard Mousasi, and it kind of reminds you of Rory McDonald versus Neiman Gracie, right? Last weekend. You got a guy who's undefeated. He's a specialist in jiu-jitsu, world fucking class, and he's fighting a guy who's really well-rounded. I just think that, man, I like Lovato a lot, but Gegard Mousasi is a different animal, and he's been fighting MMA for a very, very long time. And it's not necessarily that if Lovato gets him to the ground that he can't finish him. It's going to be like, how are you going to set him up and get him there? Because Gegard can wrestle. He can strike. He's dangerous. He's long. He's big. It's a tough fucking fight for Lovato, man. I think Gegard's probably going to dominate that fight, and just it's going to be a lesson for Lovato. And Lovato's a little bit older getting into this game. You know, there are going to be things that you're going to see differences in the movement and the way that like Gegard throws the strikes out there. It's gonna make securing a takedown and getting a submission against Mousasi a lot tougher. You know, and it's exciting because what if Lovato does get him down? Then now you're talking about, you know, he's got some real potential to finish the fight because he like I said, he's a submission artist. He's a jiu-jitsu specialist, world champion, you know, with the Sanjay and Saulo Hibiero, right? Under those guys. So his jiu-jitsu is no fucking joke. But man, when you're fighting MMA, it's a different world. Not all that stuff works. Not all of it applies. And he looks good in the stand-up. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he looks bad. I just think that when you fight Mousasi, it's going to be a bit of an eye-opener for people about the levels to this thing, you know? And then in bare knuckle, there's a huge feud going on between Paulie Malignaggi and Artem Lobov. And to be honest, I don't really know what the fuck's going to happen. The one thing that you have to think about, right, is this can go one of two ways. And I don't really know. I don't know how it's going to go. But UFC fighters are accustomed to fighting and boxing with smaller gloves, right? Like the defense is smaller, you can cover up, and it doesn't cover up as much of your head, right? You only got 4-ounce gloves on. So on one hand, the transition for them to bare knuckle is probably a little bit easier in terms of what they're used to wearing on their hands and the way they throw their strikes and everything. But on the other hand, if you're a boxer and, you know, you're already precise with your punches, and then you get to take, like when you hit somebody with a boxing glove, think about all the surface area, right, that you're hitting them with. But when you take that off, now, I mean, you might be talking about laser precision with a former professional world-class boxer in Paulie Malignaggi. So I don't really know how it's going to play out. I'm sure it's going to be a war. They fucking hate each other. I feel like it's going to be a little bit harder to knock guys out in a, you know, not, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I know you get busted up pretty good when you fight it, but I'm going to tune in. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to try to maybe put it on my laptop if it's on during the UFC fights. But I'm looking forward to it, man. I mean, I'm not really rooting for either of them. You know, if I had to pick one that I'd want to see win, it would be Artem, just because he comes from an MMA background in the UFC, right? But I don't know. Paulie Malignaggi's like, seems desperate to get on the camera and stuff. I don't really know, man. I just want to see a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see how it plays out. And I don't like the way that bare knuckle runs things necessarily, like their promoter. If you put on a boring fight, you're not getting paid. Fucking stupid, outdated thinking, but whatever, it should be a good fight. But let's move on to the main card of the UFC event coming up this weekend, headlined by Renato Moicano and the Korean Zombie. The first fight on the main card is going to be Kevin Holland versus Alessio Di Chirico. And Kevin Holland, man, is an interesting cat. He's first off, he's got really long limbs, so he's got long range, and he's good at striking, right? He's rangy on the feet. He maintains distance well. He's good with his timing, good with counters, good with going first. And his jiu-jitsu game is really fucking good too. He's a brown belt, and he's got those long limbs, man, that lets him do things that a lot of people aren't able to do. And you saw him in the fight against Thiago Santos, and he was able to control Thiago's posture at times and put him in danger, almost armbar him, you know, and hang around with Thiago, who is going to be fighting John Jones for the 205 belt. They fought at 185. So how much of that is Thiago depleting himself, blah, 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 I don't know. But the point is, Kevin Holland is talented, and he shit talks a lot. He's fun to watch. He's going to be running his mouth during the whole fight, I'm sure. But he's fighting a guy in Alessio Di Chirico who's tough as fuck, man, coming off a win over Julian Marquez. And here's the thing, though. I just think that, like, when you watch Kevin Holland, there's a feeling that there's, like, a potential special, like, he's a special talent. And I just think that with his range and his weapons and the way that he's going to be able to maintain distance. And even if the guy does take him down, you know, he's gonna be tough. He's tough off his back. He does a lot of things well. He's offensive. He can throw up triangles. He can throw up arm bars. You know, he's tricky. He's not going to be somebody that you. And I say this all the time. If you're looking for somebody with like a championship mentality when they're fighting, watch how guys respond when they're put in tough situations. A lot of guys will sit there and take breaks and rest and try to recover, like when they're in half guard or on the bottom of side control. Kevin Holland does not do that shit. Kevin Holland is always moving and looking to advance position or get to a better position if he's in danger. You need to do that because the other person, if you want to get to a world-class level in fighting, the other person is going to be putting it on you constantly. And if you can't respond by actively and, you know, using crisp technique late into rounds when you're tired and stuff, it's going to be a long fucking path to get to the title. But I look for stuff like that, things that, you know, what's going on up here, right, when they're fighting. And I like the way Kevin Holland responds to pressure, and that's one of the main reasons I'm picking. Put technique aside, I like how he responds to things. I like how he's active. I like how he's always moving. I like how he's looking for finishes and, you know, from his back in situations where it's tough to get finishes from. Like those are things that you like to see. People who can keep the other guy guessing and, you know, making them work as they're trying to work on you. It's tough, man, but having offensive jiu-jitsu off your back is I think it's so important, and I think it's so underrated because if you get taken down by a wrestler and you don't even have the skills to get back up, man, you're going to be in for a long fucking night. A long night. Because it's hard to submit wrestlers. They got good top pressure, you know, like, and it's not like at this level they're not training jiu-jitsu. So you take this guy who just learned to smash people his whole life from the age of 8 or 9. He was wrestling, right? Just over and over and over again. His top pressure is crazy. But so if you don't have a way to deal with that and you get taken down by a wrestler with a good top game, good fucking luck. It's kind of what makes a Tony Ferguson versus Khabib fight so interesting if it ever happens, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Dustin Poirier is a black belt. And I think that fight with we're getting sidetracked here, but that fight with Dustin Poirier, people are not giving Dustin Poirier enough credit. One of the things that you have to do with people who like to apply Khabib's entire game plan stems from pressure and getting takedowns off you, right? Like he's trying to push you and set things up and get the takedown. He just wants to grab you and grapple you. But Dustin Poirier is a black belt, and all you have to do against Khabib is get back to your motherfucking feet. And Dustin Poirier has really good footwork. He's always in position. And if you look at like the fight against Max Holloway, I don't care what weight class it was at, man. Max Holloway is no fucking joke. And the way that you make people back off of you and stop applying pressure is to make them pay for applying it in the first place. You have to swing. You have to throw. And Dustin Poirier throws fucking volume, and he doesn't rely on kicks. He relies on a boxing-heavy technique, man. It's going to be interesting. I'm telling you, like if Khabib is pushing forward and getting hit in the face, it will impact his ability to take him down. And you look at Conor, and I thought Conor was going to just like kind of slice through him, right? Khabib, because Conor's so precise and he's kind of a counter striker, but you realize that when those things aren't working and you got a sniper like Conor, right? I mean, that if that one shot misses, it could have drastic consequences. Whereas like Dustin Poirier kind of reminds me of like the infantry a little bit more, right? Like he's firing a machine gun. Whereas Conor's looking for that one shot at the guy, and if he misses, he's fucked. Dustin's kind of like in the trenches, right? Throwing volume, throwing tons of punches, trying to make things happen. I think he's got a better shot than people give him credit for. His boxing and his footwork have come a long fucking way. That boy knows how to fight and throw his hands. So it's going to be interesting, man. And he's a black belt, so he can get up. Anyway, to get back to the main card, I'm taking Kevin Holland over Alessio Di Chirico. I think he'll finish him. I just don't know how. Moving on, we have got Andrea Lee, who's ranked number 10 right now in the featherweight division, fighting Montana De La Hosa. And Montana came up through the Ultimate Fighter. Andrea Lee was a prospect from I can't remember where, but she came over, and she's been on a run lately. And both these girls can grapple. I think I'm taking Andrea Lee in this fight just because I think her stand-up game, I think her hands are faster. I think her technique is more crisp. I think she's going to be able to impose her will on the feet. But the path to victory for Montana is probably going to have to – the problem with Andrea Lee is she's pretty good on the ground too. So even if Montana is able to take it there, she's going to have to rely on securing position and not trying to, do anything too crazy. Like, you got to take her down, wear her down, secure position, and look for the finish as it comes. Don't force anything. I think that, I don't know, man. Andrea Lee, it's going to be tough because I think that Montana's going to have a hard time holding Andrea Lee down. I think Andrea Lee's, every time that Montana takes her down, she's going to be able to get back to her feet and then throw punches. And I think she's going to have an advantage in the stand-up department. And I think she's good enough off her back to get back to her feet when Montana takes her down. But like I said, if Montana can get the takedowns, she needs to manage them. She needs to not get crazy with them. Don't try to slice through them out. Just secure position. Take your time. Make sure you're not letting her posture back up or anything, and just slowly whittle out a win. I don't think that Montana will get a finish if she wins this fight, but I think it'll be. If Montana wins, I think it will likely come on the ground with her securing top position. And if Andrea wins, it'll likely come through dominance on the feet and stuffing takedowns. But we'll see. That's a good fight. And I don't know a lot about either of these girls because they're still relatively young in their careers. So fights like this are always fun to see how they're going to end up playing out. But I'm taking Andrea Lee in a stand. If she wins, I think it'll be because of her stand-up. Just a little more crisp, and her hands are going to be a lot faster, I think. I think that you'll see that difference in the fight too, like from the first spell. Like when they start fighting and Andrea Lee starts throwing her jab out, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, like Montana's probably not going to want to do this the whole fight. Next on the card is a fun one, a welterweight bout between Bryan Barberena and Randy Brown. And Randy Brown is coming off that vicious knockout loss to Nico Price, where Nico caught the foot behind his head and started hammer fisting him and knocked him out up against the cage. And but other than that, man, Randy Brown's talented. I mean, he lost decision to Bilal Muhammad, who is no fucking joke, and Muhammad would just go. You got this long range you got, right? And what do they have to use to cover distance? They got to use their legs. You got to beat their legs up. And Bilal Muhammad did a great fucking job of beating his legs up in that fight, and it really negated a lot of the stuff that Randy Brown does well, like using his reach and using his length and keeping people on the end of his punches. So the problem is he's fighting a guy in Bryan Barberena who's just tough as shit, right? I mean, he knocked out Jake Ellenberger, got knocked out. Who just knocked Bryan Barberena out? It was I cannot remember who it was. I'm going to have to look it up. But Bryan Barberena is, like I said, he's just tough, man. And he fights really well inside the pocket. And he's got a lot more power behind his punches than you would expect when you see him, right? He trains out of the MMA lab, I believe, with like the likes of Benson Henderson, Scott Holtzman, Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque is no fucking joke, though, man. I mean, for him to hang in that whole time, and I think he came back in the second round and won the second round, and he just throws volume, right? He's going to be pushing the pace. He's going to be. I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to use his wrestling to win this fight, because I think if you look at like what Randy Brown did to Mickey Gall, it's going to be hard to dominate him on the ground with Barberena's background. But what I do think you have to do if you're Barberena is you have to make this fight dirty. You got to turn this fight into a war, right, where you're fighting a lot in the clinch and you're throwing uppercuts and you're just dirty boxing him. Push him up against the cage, keep everything close, because if Randy Brown gets to utilize his weapons, right, and that length that he has and his ability to step in and snipe you and get back out and cover distance, he's also fast, right? He's not just long, he's fast. So not only can he cover distance well, but he can do it with speed. If Barberena can't turn this into a gritty type of fight, I think it's going to be a long night for him. If I'm Barberena, I'm looking for a lot of clinch battles. I'm looking for an exhausting fight. I'm trying to tire Randy Brown out. I'm trying to take the energy out of him. I'm using leg kicks. Like I said, I'm using the clinch. I'm short little uppercuts, in tight, like hooks. You got to stay tight, because if you get out into length, you're going to be playing in Randy Brown's world, and I don't think he wants to fight that fight. This is a tough one, man, because this one is like, sometimes it's about like who can make in-fight adjustments, right? And that's always the case, but sometimes it really does just boil down to style. And whoever is going to be able to impose their will in this fight, like that sounds such an obvious thing to say, but like with the way they match up, I think it's this matchup is a lot more simple than some of the other ones you're going to break down. Like Randy Brown is long, Bryan Barberena is not. Bryan Barberena is not a whiz on the ground, but he's good. And Randy Brown, like I said, he beat up Mickey Gall, so he's pretty good on the ground. So I think you're going to see a lot of the stay on the feet. And it's just going to boil down to whether Randy Brown can maintain distance. And if he can, he'll likely win. And if Barberena can close distance, he'll likely win. I think it's going to be a fun fight, potential fight of the night candidate, honestly. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm taking Randy Brown. I think that if he goes out and he's on his game, just his speed and everything, I think he'll be able to maintain that distance and keep him at bay and try to, when you get pushed up against the cage and get into those clinch positions, you don't need to stay there. You need to look for a way out and get back to the center for him. And Barberena's got to look for a way to keep him there. Like I said, this fight sounds simple, but the way their styles match up, I think it will be a simple matchup. It'll come down to range. That's it. John Lineker and Rob Font are fighting next in the co-main event, and that's about between the number 10 and 12 ranked bantamweights in the world. And John Lineker is, man, he's so funny to watch fight because you watch him and it's like 90% of the punches that he throws are hooks or uppercuts. He throws a jab. He has really good, he does have powerful leg kicks, but when he throws punches, almost all of them are hooks, but he has an uncanny way of landing them, right? Like he has great timing on them. He counters well, and when people are coming in, he catches them constantly. I mean, it's not like it's not working, so how can you criticize it? He's coming off a close fight against Corey Sandhagen, who I felt like Sandhagen won the fight. I thought it should have been a unanimous decision, but I also train at Easton in Denver, so I'm a little bit biased towards the guys who fight there. But Corey Sandhagen's the guy to watch out for, man. I thought he won the fight. But before that, knocked out Brian Kelleher. Before that, beat Marlon Vera. He's got a lot of big wins on his record, man. Like, listen, Ian McCall, Francisco Rivera, he beat Rob Font before, by the way. This is a rematch, but kind of hard to count that because it's 3 years ago, and Rob Font is a completely different fighter. And when you watch that fight, Rob Font came out kind of throwing these weird kicks, and I think he was just kind of so here's the difference maker in this fight to me, regardless of past opponent, whatever. I think that if you watch the evolution of these two fighters, Rob Font is completely different than when they fought 3 years ago, and John Lineker's kind of the same, right? Like when John Lineker fought someone really well-rounded like TJ Dillashaw or like a Corey Sandhagen, he struggles a little bit, right? Because they're mixing things up, and he's mainly relying on knocking you out or just hitting you with power punches. How many submissions? 4 submission wins, 14 knockouts, 12 decisions, right? He likes to stand and bang. And I think that at this point in his career, Rob Font's going to have more in his striking arsenal, and he's aggressive and he likes to go first, and I think it's going to be a problem for Lineker. I think when Lineker's fighting Font in this fight, I think you're going to see Rob Font, I think, coming forward, marching forward a lot more. And I think that you're going to have to see Lineker counter well if he wants to win this one. If he's letting Font go first, man, it's going to be tough. Rob Font is fucking good, and he can put the pressure on you. He just beat Sergio Pettis. I mean, granted, Pettis moved up in weight, but I don't know, man. I think that Font has just evolved more since their last fight than Lineker has, and that makes it easier for Font to game plan for Lineker and harder for Lineker to game plan for Font. And I think Font's going to be able to impose his will in this fight. But it's a tough one, man. I don't know. A lot of great fights on this card. Like this has fight of the night potential too. I think that any of these top 3 fights have potential to be real fucking barn burners. But I'm taking Rob Font. I don't know if he'll finish him, but I do think he's going to outpoint him. I think he's going to be way more aggressive in this fight. And not only way more aggressive, but way more tight and compact with the strikes. Like I said, he was throwing some wild stuff, some weird stuff, and like it was the first time he fought Lineker, and when you're fighting a guy like that who's as talented as him, you're thinking that the thing that you want to do is establish your range, right? But it just didn't seem like Font to me. It's not the Font that's fighting right now, who's been running through people, So this is a great fucking fight. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm taking Font decision, or maybe second, third round finish. He's aggressive, and if he's going first, it's going to be hard for Lineker to stop it, I think. And finally, we're on to the main event between Renato Moicano and Chan Sung Jung, and both of these guys are coming off big knockout losses, right? Renato Moicano to Jose Aldo, and the Korean Zombie to that famous, I don't even know what you fucking call it, right? Upward elbow from Yair Rodriguez in the last second of the 5th round at UFC Denver. I was there for that fight. We actually paid like a little more money to sit down on the floor for that fight. Totally worth it if you got like. I can't afford to do it for pay-per-view fights, right? Because they're fucking huge most of the time. But like for fight nights like that, it's worth it to sit down on the floor just to be that close to the action and see everything going on. If you guys have ever considered doing that, buy the floor seats or for like a lower end fight card, not that the talent on it was lower end, but the names, they don't draw as much attention. So the tickets are a little more affordable. So like pay the extra money, move down there. It's a lot more fun. Anyway, though, Chan Sung Jung knocked out Dennis Bermudez when he came back to the UFC before that fight. So this is going to be his third fight since returning from service in the Korean Army, right? They have like a 2 or 3 year mandatory service program over there. So he's done with that now. He's back in the UFC training, and he's a guy who fought Jose Aldo. He's one of the scariest guys at 145 pounds, and he's got the nickname Zombie for a reason. He marches fucking forward, man. He's tough, and he's skillful. He's good on the ground. He's good everywhere. This is a great fight between two guys who are, and you look at Renato Moicano and the way that he ran through Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson is no fucking joke. Like, he's a black belt. He's really good on the feet. Like, he put a clinic on Artem Lobov, who's fighting this weekend, the Korean Superboy. They had a great fight, but Moicano is a different animal. Moicano is also someone who, he fights a guy like Jose Aldo, and you kind of remember, like, oh, yeah, Jose Aldo is still the fucking man, right? But when he fought Brian Ortega, I thought that he was beating Ortega up until he shot a takedown in the third round. Maybe that was from exhaustion. It was a close fucking fight, don't get me wrong, but if he doesn't get guillotined by Ortega, if he doesn't make the decision to shoot a takedown on Ortega, the landscape at 145 pounds could look totally different. Renato Moicano is very good on the feet, man. Very good. This is a fun fight, and I think it's primarily going to stay on the feet. 5 rounds. The 5-round fight is how many times has Chan Sung Jung done it, right? Like, this will be his 3rd or 4th time doing it probably. And he didn't look bad when he fought Yair. Like, they just decided to throw down in the last 10 seconds. Remember we fucking talked about this earlier? Like, Dana White wants guys to do that? Why? I thought the Korean Zombie was going to win that fight if he didn't throw down. If he would have secured a takedown, he would have won that fight. I think he was winning it on the judges' scorecards as well. And then to get knocked out like that with 1 second left, like, don't fucking tell me that fighters should throw down like that, especially when you see real-life outcomes happen in front of your eyes. When a guy's winning a fight and all of a sudden he's face down on the fucking canvas, knocked out cold. Anyway, this is a tough one to pick, man. I think as this fight starts to get into the middle of the 3rd round, and you could be looking at a decision here where it's very close, right? Because I think Renato Moicano is probably going to control things early, and as the fight goes on, the Korean Zombie is probably going to be able to make some adjustments, capitalize on the exhaustion, and start pushing the pace in the later rounds. I think if Moicano wants to win this fight, he probably has to finish the Korean Zombie. Because I think the Zombie's just going to keep marching him down. He's going to just keep coming, man. He's got that nickname for a reason. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen in this fight. It's going to be a great fucking fight, but I don't know. I don't really have an honest prediction for you. I would say that if Moicano's going to win, it's probably going to come early. If this fight goes 5 rounds, I think it's going to go to the Korean Zombie. Just because, like I said, as Moicano gets tired, and if he can't get Zombie out of there, he's going to have to – a lot of factors in this one, right? Like, if Moicano's opening up early and he's really pouring it on, he can't finish Zombie. Zombie's going to take over in the later rounds. No doubt about it. But if Moicano comes out and fights a slow, tactical pace and just tries to outpoint Zombie, I think he's got a chance to win. It just depends on this is the thing about fighting, man, is regardless of how many fights they've had before – and what you try to do, right, is at least what I try to do when I watch them, is I try to watch all their past fights and think about how they matched up against different opponents and what aspects of their game against those opponents are going to transition over to this fight, right? And it's a lot of the times, man, most of the time, it's fucking impossible. Like, doing these picks and stuff is fun. Like, I love doing it. Like, I love seeing but it's mainly just to see, like, if things play out the way I thought like, sometimes they do play out the way I thought they were going to, but most of the time they don't. So this is one of those fights, man, where a lot of things, it could happen. I think also when you have 5 rounds, there's a lot more variability. Like, a lot more things can happen because you have to game plan completely differently. You're talking about 10 extra minutes of fighting. So more possibility for things to happen, more possibility for guys to get tired, more possibility for the tide to change and the momentum to swing in somebody else's direction. You know, when you got a 3-round fight, there's not as much room for feeling out in the beginning. It's a lot of moving pieces in this, man. But this is going to be a good fight. I'm taking the Korean Zombie by decision just out of grit. I think Moicano is going to hit him with some things that aren't going to drop him, and it's going to kind of start to discourage him over the course of the fight, and the Zombie will take over and get like a late 4th round or maybe a 5th round. 4th round finish maybe, but I think he'll take home a 5-round decision. I think he's just going to beat up on him over the course of the fight. But that wraps this one up, guys. Like I said, there's a lot of events to watch out for this weekend. Keep your eyes out for Jay Cuccinello fighting an FFC tonight. But yeah, I think that does it. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so I know this was rusty, so I apologize. But trying to get back into it, and appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.